Welcome to the Explainer. Today we're going to tackle something that, well, it gets to pretty much every single one of us on a really deep, really personal level: sin, and those incredibly powerful emotions of guilt and shame that are so often tied to it. So, let's just jump right in with a question that I'm willing to bet has crossed your mind more than once. We use these words all the time: guilt and shame. But have you ever stopped to think about what the real difference is? Because, as we're about to see, how you answer that question changes everything. But look, before we even try to pull them apart, we've got to start with this one simple truth. We have to acknowledge that these feelings, they're just a fundamental part of the human experience. And we're not just talking about some fleeting feeling, right? These emotions are, they're absolute powerhouses in our lives. They can shape our behavior, our choices, our entire view of the world. But to really get a handle on their impact, we need to zoom in on the concept they're so deeply connected to. Which brings us to the core concept here. Let's really dig into the foundational definition of sin, because you'll see it's not just about a dusty old rulebook, it's about a relationship. So check this out. Sin is framed here as way more than just, a simple mistake or a moral slip-up. It's talked about as a genuine rebellion against God's will, a fundamental break in our connection to the divine. And that break, it has some serious personal consequences. And this quote, man, it just hits the nail on the head. It perfectly illustrates that central idea. Sin isn't just something you do, it's a force that actually creates a chasm, a real separation. And it's that feeling of separation that leads us right into our own psychology. Okay, and this is where things get super interesting psychologically speaking. That idea of a breach or a separation, well, it doesn't just hang out there as an abstract concept. It manifests inside our heads as two totally different emotions. This is where theology and psychology really collide. Okay, you really have to get this distinction because it is absolutely crucial. Guilt is all about your actions. It's that voice in your head saying, I did something bad. And you know what? That can be useful. It can motivate you to apologize, to change, to make things right. But shame is a whole different beast. It goes for the jugular. It attacks your identity. It's that toxic, quiet whisper that says, I am bad. And shame doesn't want to fix anything. It just wants you to hide. So you might be thinking, if these feelings are so intense and the difference between them is so clear, why is it so darn hard to deal with them? Why can't we just face them head on? What's going on in our own minds that makes it so difficult? Well, the material points to four big psychological walls we put up. First up, you've got self-deception. We rationalize. We tell ourselves, wasn't that big of a deal. Then there's a lack of accountability. We isolate ourselves so we don't have to face anyone. Third, we throw up all these defensive shields. We deny it, we blame somebody else, we project our feelings onto them. And finally, and this one is really heavy, unresolved trauma from our past can pour gasoline on that fire of shame, making it feel absolutely impossible to face. So, what's the fallout? What happens when we just let this internal battle rage on without dealing with it? Well, it doesn't stay inside. Not for long. It starts to spill out, creating these huge ripple effects that touch every single part of our lives. First, and this is probably the one we all feel the most, it just wrecks our relationships. That unresolved guilt and shame make us defensive, irritable, or just plain distant. And we end up pushing away the very people, our family, our friends, that we need the most. And then, what happens? That emotional weight, it just gets heavier and heavier until it's crushing. And that can lead us right into self-sabotage. We might fall into addictive patterns or other self-destructive behaviors, looking for any way to numb that pain, or maybe even subconsciously to punish ourselves. And finally, there's this really deep consequence. On a spiritual level, getting stuck in that shame cycle, it's like hitting a wall. Your growth just stops. If you can't find a way to forgive yourself, you can't move forward. You're stuck. So where does that leave us? What's the big takeaway from all this? It's that understanding the whole mess, the definitions, the psychological traps we fall into, that's step one. That's the most important step. Because the path forward isn't around these feelings. It's straight through them. And really, this is the bottom line. The path to getting better, to healing, to mending those broken connections with other people and with the divine, it doesn't go around these hard emotions. It goes directly through them. Actually facing them is the only way to find forgiveness, restoration, and genuine personal growth.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty heavy question to chew on, doesn't it? If real growth demands that we face these things, what are you avoiding? And more importantly, what could you become if you finally found the courage to face it?